Long ago, a remarkable prophecy foretold an earth-wide teaching program to occur in the final part of the days. Great multitudes would be taught. But how and by whom? And what would they be taught? The inspired Bible record in Isaiah chapter 2 and verse 3 explains, "And many peoples will certainly go and say, 'Come, you people, and let us go up to the mountain of Jehovah, to the house of the God of Jacob. And he will instruct us about his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion law will go forth, and the word of Jehovah out of Jerusalem.'" As Jesus taught the multitudes in his day, he revealed the source of his teaching by quoting from another part of Isaiah's prophecy, saying, "It is written in the prophets, and they will all be taught by Jehovah. Everyone that has heard from the Father and has learned comes to me." Is Isaiah's prophecy now undergoing fulfillment? Do we see a global movement of people from all nations walking according to God's righteous standards? The answer will be provided by what you will see in this slide presentation, entitled, "Multitudes Being Taught by Jehovah." This is the final segment in a series of 3-slide presentations showing the history of an international organization of people who are taught by Jehovah. In Part 2, we learned that the identity of the great crowd spoken of at Revelation chapter 7, verse 9, was explained at the 1935 convention in Washington, D.C., and the information was then published in detail in the Watchtower and the book entitled Riches. During the 1950s, large conventions held mainly in New York City accelerated the ingathering of the great crowd. These convention facilities, along with overflow tents and a trailer city, accommodated more than 165,000 representing 97 countries on the occasion of the 1953 New World Society Assembly. In 1958, throngs packed out and overflowed New York City's Yankee Stadium and the nearby Polo Grounds. Over 253,000 attended the final day of this 8-day international convention. It was a mammoth event that received wide publicity in many lands. The baptism of 7,136 at Orchard Beach was an outstanding feature that made the convention a historic gathering indeed. This is the largest mass baptism of new disciples on record. Our last presentation also focused on the 1963 Everlasting Good News conventions that started in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Groups of delegates traveled to over 20 cities around the world. The total attendance at these stirring conventions was 580,509. Truly, a great number of people were accepting the truth. This was highlighted further by the huge turnout at the Pasadena, California convention in September of that year. Part 2 of this slide presentation concluded with that Pasadena convention and posed the question, to what extent would the organization yet grow before the final end? Now, let us see what Jehovah's Witnesses have been doing over the past quarter of a century. Since 1963, when there were upwards of 1 million ministers of Jehovah's Witnesses, their preaching and disciple-making work has intensified. In remote areas of the frigid Yukon, they have searched for deserving ones. Their territory has included tropical islands scattered over the vast Pacific. The good news has reached people living in the widely scattered rural regions of Australia. Those inhabiting the villages of West Africa have been given the opportunity of hearing the kingdom message in the same way as those living in large European cities. Zealous witnesses have spoken to people in marketplaces found in various countries of Central and South America, such as the one shown here in Bolivia. They have worked in the alpine farmlands of Austria. From north to south and east to west, the good news reaches people by means of the house-to-house ministry. This is done in imitation of Jesus and of the Apostle Paul, who said he taught publicly and from house to house. In addition, Jehovah's Witnesses endeavor to witness to interested persons on the streets, as well as in other places. Those responding are offered a home Bible study, conducted with them individually or as a family group. Soon an invitation is extended to attend a congregation book study in their own neighborhood. Next, they are encouraged to associate with the local congregation at the Kingdom Hall, where new ones find a friendly atmosphere. During the week, Jehovah's Witnesses and their associates attend the Theocratic Ministry School. This school not only serves to prepare and train male students to speak from the public platform, but equips all publishers, such as these sisters in Alaska, to be more effective in presenting the good news from house to house. How else are new publishers and experienced ministers equipped for the field ministry? By means of the service meeting. In Sweden, an elder is presiding over a demonstration, teaching how to offer the literature in the field. In all congregations of Jehovah's Witnesses, a watchtower study, like this one in Korea, is held each week. It provides Jehovah's Witnesses with spiritual food at the proper time, so that they all may be fitly united in the same mind and in the same line of thought. Circuit assemblies are another means for teaching. On these occasions, such as the one here in Germany, a number of neighboring congregations come together to receive Bible instruction. And each year, larger conventions made up of several circuits are held to instruct millions of people in Jehovah's ways. This array of convention programs reminds us of the increasing spiritual enlightenment and organizational development of Jehovah's Witnesses over the past 2 decades and more. For example, at the Word of Truth assemblies in 1965, God's people received 2 releases. One was the book, Things in Which It Is Impossible for God to Lie, featuring 105 illustrations to help people learn some of the main events in the Bible. The other publication, Make Sure of All Things, listed appropriate scriptures applicable to a variety of subjects. These releases delighted many audiences, including the multitudes that attended the convention held in New York's Yankee Stadium. The following year, at the God's Sons of Liberty assemblies, the book Life Everlasting in Freedom of the Sons of God was released. This book clarified the neutral position of Jehovah's Witnesses with regard to world controversies. Something new was featured on the convention program in 1966. Bible dramas. Since that year, ancient as well as modern-day Bible dramas have become a regular feature at conventions. Such presentations in biblical settings have proved to be highly instructive. Some of them highlighted important events in the history of God's ancient people, Israel. One of the dramas dealt with the trials of Jeremiah. In 1967, at the English-language disciple-making district assemblies, the book, Did Man Get Here by Evolution or by Creation, was released. It proved to be a boon to many school-age children in upholding the Bible's account of creation. Over the years, some 26 million copies of this publication in 18 languages have been distributed worldwide. Something special was in store for the year 1968. For the good news for all nations district assemblies, the Watchtower of February 15 promised, "On Friday, something is planned that will not only delight you, but also no doubt surprise you, for it will have considerable influence on the work that we will be doing during the years to come." With keen anticipation, the brothers awaited the designated part on the convention program. They were not disappointed. This publication, The Truth That Leads to Eternal Life, was released. A Bible study program was inaugurated in which this whole book would be covered with newly interested ones in only 6 months. In just 12 years following its release, 100 million copies of this book were published in 115 languages, which resulted in hundreds of thousands of people being taught by Jehovah and coming into a dedicated relationship with Him. As the year 1969 approached, Jehovah's people everywhere were looking forward to the Peace on Earth International Assemblies. In the United States, at the convention held in Atlanta, Georgia, 57,626 attended. To the delight of the audience, the Society released these publications. On the right is the book, Is the Bible Really the Word of God? As brothers leafed through the book, on the left, Then is Finished the Mystery of God, their appetites were whetted to learn more about the last book of the Bible. This book complemented the publication Babylon the Great Has Fallen, God's Kingdom Rules, released in 1963. Now there was a current commentary on each chapter of the book of Revelation. Other lands, too, were most enthusiastic about the timely program. 4 language groups met in Copenhagen, Denmark in August of that year. In Seoul, Korea, some 14,600 came to the public lecture, and 1,511 were baptized. The light of truth was shining with increasing brilliance. Would this increased understanding lead to an adjustment in the organization? This is what was explained in 1971 at the time of the Divine Name District Assemblies, like this one held in France. At that same series of assemblies, the books Listening to the Great Teacher and the Theocratic Ministry School Guidebook were released. Millions of copies of the Great Teacher book have been produced and distributed worldwide. What a help to parents this proved to be in teaching their young ones about Jehovah's ways. The school guidebook is still effectively used each week for speech counsel in the Theocratic Ministry School. The 1,696-page book, Aid to Bible Understanding, was also released. Its more than 4,000 subjects give historical, geographic, religious, and other information helpful to Bible students. The publication, The Nation Shall Know That I Am Jehovah, How? Bringing us a better understanding of the book of Ezekiel, rounded out the combination of releases that year. The following year saw the release of the book, Organization for Kingdom Preaching and Disciple Making. It outlined the apostolic method of governing each congregation by a local body of elders. Instead of only one man being viewed as overseer of the congregation, all who make up the body of elders would be overseers. This arrangement prepared the organization for the influx of even greater numbers of people desiring to be taught by Jehovah. The transition to a body of elders in each congregation began in the latter part of the year 1972. Now, more time would be spent by elders in shepherding the flock. Emphasis was also placed on traveling overseers helping publishers to improve in their field ministry. Another valuable aspect of their service was the strengthening of appointed servants. As here in England, meetings conducted by a traveling overseer with elders and ministerial servants can help them fulfill their responsibilities in a way that benefits all in the congregation. As late as 1970, kingdom activity was restricted in some 40 countries. That was the case in Argentina, where such a situation made it difficult for Jehovah's people to carry on their worship. The same was true in Spain. Nevertheless, even under such conditions, multitudes of sheep-like ones were being taught by Jehovah. Because of circumstances, this group of witnesses in an Eastern European land met together in a private home. Jehovah, through his organization, continues to care for the spiritual needs of his people who experience these conditions. When this large throng assembled at Munich, Germany, to hear the public lecture for the Divine Victory International Assembly in 1973, a German newspaper said, "The message of Jehovah's Witnesses is simple and clear. The Bible is God's Word, and it is prophetic for this world. For this reason, we have to learn from it and live according to it." At this gathering, along with the convention at Dusseldorf, there was a combined attendance of 146,742. In the neighboring country of Belgium, delegates from 44 different countries assembled in Brussels, and the attendance soared to over 53,000. One Brussels newspaper reported, "Their brotherhood is practiced with a smile, which enables one to overcome the language barrier. The zeal of the witnesses compels us to admire them." At that convention, 2,286 new disciples of Jesus Christ were baptized. Separate halls were used to accommodate thousands of brothers from Portugal and Spain. Dutch sessions were also conducted, and visitors from Holland shared in these same blessings. And how did the convention in France fare at that time? All 60,241 who attended at the Columbus Stadium near Paris were determined to resist the pressures of the world and await the victory of the King Christ Jesus over Satan's wicked system of things. In Sydney, Australia, a similar convention was held for the benefit of thousands of conventioners. Highlights of the convention releases that year were the books God's Kingdom of 1,000 Years Has Approached and True Peace and Security, as well as a comprehensive concordance of 1,280 pages with 333,000 entries to help all in their personal research and Bible study. Does this not prove that Jehovah has a well-equipped organization for teaching multitudes? Here at Yankee Stadium in New York, a group of enthusiastic missionaries examined the book True Peace and Security, anxiously anticipating its use in the missionary work. How did the teaching program expand into the 1970s? In large metropolitan areas, many circuits found it difficult to locate facilities for assemblies. In New York City, it was decided to purchase a theater for use as an assembly hall. This building, acquired in 1965, became known as the Queen's Assembly Hall. Shortly thereafter, other buildings were purchased and renovated for use as assembly halls. In the Philadelphia area, this assembly hall was constructed. In time, other assembly halls were built, like this one at Monroe, New York. And as the years went by, similar facilities were built in many other countries, such as this fine, spacious building that was constructed in Canada. As greater numbers responded to the good news being taught, it was necessary in 1984 and 1985 for 2 more assembly halls to be obtained in the New York City area. The former Albemarle Theater, located in Brooklyn, was renovated into a 2,600-seat auditorium. And the Stanley Theater, in Jersey City, New Jersey, was restored to provide accommodation for gatherings of up to 4,300. Scores of buildings in other countries have been constructed or renovated since 1965 for use as assembly halls. This building in Sydney, Australia, was formerly a clothing factory. And this is how an assembly hall in Britain looks after the original building on the site was completely refurbished. In Sweden, this assembly hall near Stockholm serves the needs of the circuits in that area. Here are some others. In France, in Italy, and in Japan. Just look at the heartfelt appreciation displayed by this Japanese audience for the scriptural counsel received. And in West Germany, this assembly hall is one of 9 serving the needs of all the circuits in that country. Such assembly halls are fine places where multitudes assemble and are taught by Jehovah. What is another provision Jehovah uses to gather multitudes into his organization? It is the Gilead Missionary School. Originally located in the Finger Lakes district of New York State, the school was later transferred to Brooklyn. Since 1980, the school has been located on the 12th floor of 30 Columbia Heights. There is a fine theocratic library where research and study are done by students as part of their school training. Here is one of the classrooms, where students receive instruction to prepare them for missionary work. During the school course, students benefit not only from classroom instruction, but also from lectures given periodically by members of the governing body to the entire Bethel family. Gilead graduations were once held at the Queen's Assembly Hall. However, following the dedication of the Jersey City Assembly Hall on September 7, 1985, graduations have been held there with capacity crowds in attendance. Graduates of Gilead are encouraged to take their assignments seriously. These are joyful and memorable occasions, long remembered by the missionaries presently serving in over 115 lands. During 1981 and 1982, full-time pioneer ministers graduated from the Gilead Extension School in Mexico and in West Germany. This class graduated from the school in West Germany in January 1982. They received assignments to countries in Africa and South America. Some graduates from Mexico and West Germany were sent to Ecuador, where open-air markets are ideal locations for preaching. 2 classes that were taught in India were given the assignment to help expand the work right there among the hundreds of millions in that land. During the 1970s and 1980s, quite a number of missionaries were sent to Papua New Guinea. Since most of the local people cannot read or write, missionaries there have a difficult time explaining the written word. One of the older missionaries devised a simple picture method of teaching. Here, he is explaining basic Bible doctrines through the use of these drawn pictures. Over the years, scores of Gilead missionaries have gone to Japan, where they have helped thousands of people to learn the truth. Many of these, like the publisher seen here, are now pioneers who have a big share in preaching to others. On the occasion of the Zone Overseer's visit, this large group of 77 missionaries gathered at the branch. Publishers in Japan have increased from almost 3,000 to over 125,000 in just 24 years. In many parts of the earth, illiteracy is very common among the people. Can sheep-like ones in these areas be taught by Jehovah? Here is an elder who is glad to teach this group of people in Ecuador. Reading and writing classes are also held in other lands, such as Côte d'Ivoire, where French is the language spoken. Now that they have learned to read and write, these students zealously share with others what they have learned from the Bible. The year 1975 saw one of the most significant organizational adjustments in the 100-year modern-day history of Jehovah's Witnesses. In December of that year, a reorganization, as represented in this diagram, was approved by the governing body and became operative on January 1, 1976. Administrative responsibilities were divided among the Chairman's Committee, made up of 3 governing body members on a rotating basis, and 5 additional permanent committees. On February 1, 1976, a committee arrangement was put into effect in all branch offices of the Watchtower Society as well. Then, groups of branch committee members from all parts of the earth were invited to attend the branch school in Brooklyn. During this 5-week course, they received training in branch organization and toured the Society's facilities at Brooklyn and at Watchtower Farms. Branch committees may be composed of from 3 to 7 qualified overseers, and they meet regularly to discuss matters affecting the publishers in lands under their jurisdiction, as this committee in France is doing. There are many language groups to care for in South Africa. This meeting of the South Africa Branch Committee is typical of those in many branches, as committees work closely with the governing body. After this adjustment in theocratic organization, a tremendous upsurge in new branch construction ensued. Here is the Brazil branch complex, where about 500 brothers serve. Brazil now has more than 220,000 publishers, and considerable printing is done at this branch to supply the needs of the field. These facilities were dedicated during the visit of a governing body member in March 1981. Jehovah has richly blessed the work in the country of Peru. These buildings in Lima, dedicated in 1986, comprise the Bethel Home factory and office. Additions to the branch are already being constructed. Great strides have been made in the long, narrow stretch of land that makes up the country of Chile. On the outskirts of Santiago is the new Chile branch, which serves the spiritual needs of more than 30,000 active witnesses. It was dedicated in 1986. On the continent of Europe, many branches now have new or enlarged facilities, such as these in Vienna, Austria. About 40 miles from Copenhagen is the new branch at Holbæk, Denmark, which also cares for the work in Greenland and the Faroe Islands. Here, 64 members make up the Bethel family. The work in Switzerland also continues to move forward. This branch facility is used to care for the needs of over 14,000 kingdom publishers in some 260 congregations. The Spain branch is located just outside Madrid. Fine progress has been made in this land, and increasing numbers have turned to the truth. As visitors approach the main lobby, they are impressed with the appearance of these facilities. Some 20 miles from the business center of Oslo is the Norway branch. Here, the Bethel family has fine facilities in which to work. This branch was dedicated in May 1984 during a zone visit. Our hearty brothers in these northern areas keep active in advancing the kingdom interest in all kinds of weather, even during the cold winter. Situated in the dense pine woods on the outskirts of Arboga are modern branch buildings of the Society in Sweden. The work moves ahead steadily in that Scandinavian country. In the Pacific area, the brothers in New Zealand rejoice over the modern complex of factory and residential buildings making up the branch located on the outskirts of Auckland. The Philippines branch is working hard to keep up with the increase taking place in that country. Publications in a number of languages are printed here. They now have more than 100,000 publishers. And this complex of buildings in Ebina, Japan, was completed in 1982 after 4 years of hard work by witness volunteers. However, in just another 4 years, the building of another 6-story factory and an additional Bethel home of 8 stories was required. Great strides have been made in spreading the truth in Japan, where the branch committee looks at a model of new buildings to be completed during 1988. The work in Korea also needs guidance and supervision. The branch committee here meet once each week to coordinate their activities. A new branch was constructed in Korea and dedicated in May 1982. Additions to the factory, home, and office were built and dedicated just 3 years later. To serve the teeming millions of India, larger branch quarters had to be constructed at Lonavala, about 2 hours north of Bombay by train. On the continent of Africa, the work of divine education expands. This is part of the new branch facility in Ghana that was dedicated recently. In addition to the 4-story residence building, there is a fine office plus a factory on this property near the sea. These faithful witnesses were given a special invitation to attend the dedication program because of their serving Jehovah for many years. Here in Nigeria, local and international workers are busy on a huge project involving the construction of a new branch. These facilities, when completed, will care for the growing needs of the more than 130,000 publishers in that land. Outstanding developments have taken place in Zambia, where hundreds of thousands attend district conventions each year. The brothers there have also assisted their fellow witnesses in nearby countries who, as refugees, had to locate in camps like these. Although they find themselves in these circumstances, our brothers do not neglect what the Scriptures command at Hebrews 10:24 and 25, namely, to assemble together to encourage and incite one another to love and fine works. Despite the hardships and trials they have had to endure, the truth is in their heart, and their joy is obvious. South Africa recently completed this branch complex located in a suburb west of Johannesburg. Several residence buildings make up the Bethel home, which is large enough to accommodate the 290 members of the present Bethel family, and there is room for further expansion. There is a factory with printing presses and other equipment to publish literature in a number of different languages. In this large office complex, correspondence, service, and translation matters are handled. This entire new facility was dedicated in 1987. New branch facilities were also built in a suburb of Sydney, Australia. Many full-time servants from that country are serving in the South Pacific area and as missionaries in other lands. In Georgetown, Canada, located a short distance from Toronto, there is a well-laid-out branch facility to care for over 90,000 publishers in that land. The branch in Britain is located in the Greenbelt area of London. Recently, just a few hundred feet down the road from this facility, another piece of property was purchased. This building now furnishes additional office space, and a new printing facility has been constructed on the land behind it. The Central American country of Costa Rica has a new branch. A group of international volunteer construction workers helped on the project. The Netherlands branch has new facilities at Emmen in the northeast part of the country. And in the Federal Republic of Germany, there is much activity at this large branch located at Selters, north of Frankfurt. Considerable printing for much of Europe is done at the huge factory complex, which has the latest printing equipment to keep up with the heavy demand for literature. The enormous growth of God's earthly organization has also called for a continuing expansion of facilities in the United States. In 1973, the Society began making use of its Watchtower Farms properties at Walk Hill, New York, as a location for expanding magazine production. With the construction of a modern factory along with this residence building, Watchtower Farms became an important supplier of spiritual food in printed form, besides supplying foodstuffs for feeding the Bethel family in Brooklyn. Printing facilities at Watchtower Farms grew steadily as distribution of the Watchtower and Awake increased. This is also where the Society's multilanguage electronic photo typesetting system, known as MEPS, was developed. The factory was expanded further in 1985 in order to keep up with increased magazine production. This necessitated the construction of these beautiful residence buildings that were dedicated in 1986. In a period of about 12 years, the complex at Watchtower Farms has grown to the proportions that you see here. About 1,000 volunteer workers are required to maintain this complex and its operations. The Bethel family members here, as well as those at Brooklyn, benefit from hearing these and other members of the governing body who speak on various occasions to exhort and instruct on the basis of God's Word. In the year 1977, the Pioneer Service School was inaugurated. Using this textbook, the 2-week, 80-hour course is designed to help pioneers become more efficient in their field service. Pioneer schools, whether conducted in the South American country of Chile or in India, are attended by thousands of pioneer ministers in all parts of the earth. But not all the school training is academic. It includes participation in the field service too. Another provision to help teach multitudes is the Kingdom Ministry School. What is the purpose of this school? It provides a period of intensive instruction to benefit congregation elders. On such occasions, they take meaningful notes and participate in the discussion. In addition to the thousands of congregation elders who are trained by this means, in recent years, ministerial servants too have received appropriate counsel and encouragement from a school course adapted for their needs. During the past 2 decades, the surge of activity within Jehovah's organization has also required the construction of many new kingdom halls. An accelerated program of construction has been underway since 1980. Kingdom halls vary in design depending on climate, local customs, availability of building materials, and other factors. This one is located in Iceland. Here in the Solomon Islands, our brothers are accustomed to this style of Kingdom Hall. As seen in this composite slide, variety in Kingdom Halls is reflected in Austria, in the upper left, Italy, the upper right, Ireland, lower left, and India, lower right. With the rapid increase in the number of congregations, brothers in the building trades from the United States devised a method of constructing Kingdom Halls in 2 or 3 days, or over 2 weekends. This quickly built method soon spread to other lands. A typical construction project may begin about sunrise on Thursday or Friday and be completed by Sunday afternoon when the first meeting may be held. Let us now, though, go back to the year 1978. The Victorious Faith International Conventions for that year proved to be another milestone in the forward movement of God's people, including the children. At these conventions, these 2 publications were released. The beautifully illustrated publication, My Book of Bible Stories, has received wide circulation in many languages. An outstanding release in 1982 was the book, You Can Live Forever in Paradise on Earth. The conventioners in London were delighted with this publication. The year 1983 saw the release of the book, Organized to Accomplish Our Ministry. What was its purpose? It provided an overall view of how the Christian congregation operates today. Tens of thousands of new ones have benefited from the questions in the appendix, which elders use for discussion sessions with candidates for baptism. This elder in Japan is helping a newly associated person to prepare for the most important step in her life. Bearing eloquent testimony to the oneness of Jehovah's people were the 4-day Kingdom Unity District Conventions in 1983. Something unique was arranged that year. Most conventions in the United States and other nearby territories were linked with key cities by telephone hookups. For instance, during July 7 through 10, 48 conventions were tied together in the United States, Canada, and Bermuda. What a superb display of kingdom unity. The book, United in Worship of the Only True God, was released at these conventions. An announcement was made during the talk, Music That Praises Jehovah, about the release of a new songbook. 3 groups of melodies were played as samples of what the audience could expect. Another highlight of the convention was the talk, Gilead School, Its Accomplishments, from 1943 through 1983. In Frankfurt, Germany, 48 missionaries were introduced on the program. This is the modern city of Pittsburgh, where in the early 1870s there were small beginnings. On December 13, 1884, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania was incorporated under the laws of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It was appropriate that Jehovah's Witnesses should mark the centennial of the Watchtower Society by a special gathering there. On Saturday morning, October the 6th, 1984, the 100th annual business meeting of the corporation opened at the Coriopolis Assembly Hall on the outskirts of Pittsburgh. A special brochure was prepared for the occasion, featuring the progressive growth of the organization over the past century. The evening session was held at Three Rivers Stadium in the downtown area of Pittsburgh. With representatives from 53 countries present, it was a delight for the 37,733 in attendance to hear 10 members of the governing body develop the program's theme. Jehovah has always proved to be with his people. Brother Frederick W. Franz concluded his talk with the words, "We are stirred to say in unison, all hail to Jehovah God, the universal sovereign." Thunderous applause followed. How appropriate that during this centennial year, a highlight of the Kingdom Increase District Conventions was the release of the New World Translation of the Holy Scriptures with references. It contains over 125,000 cross-references, as well as helpful footnotes and a valuable appendix. It is now being published in 6 languages. What a boon to Bible students. At the Integrity Keepers District Conventions in 1985, those in attendance were delighted to receive the book, Life, How Did It Get Here? By Evolution or by Creation? And the Bible handbook, Reasoning from the Scriptures. Here, a witness in Ireland is making good use of this helpful publication in the house-to-house ministry. For the year 1985, the Watchtower announced that there would be a special convention feature. It said, chosen delegations will be invited to a number of cities in Europe, the Caribbean and Mediterranean areas, Africa, South America, the Far East, and the South Pacific. The first of the special conventions was held at Olympic Stadium in Montreal, Quebec. The stage in the foreground was used for the French program. The larger English audience heard the program as it was presented from the stage in the background. On the grounds were other buildings to accommodate various language groups, including a large auditorium for the 3,000 Spanish-speaking brothers seen here viewing the Job drama. There were 3,200 Italian-speaking brothers assembled in the bicycle stadium. And on Sunday, the Olympic Stadium was packed to capacity with a peak attendance of 78,804. A huge television screen made it possible for all in the large overflow audience to view the program. On this occasion, the speaker in his public address developed the timely subject, God's times and seasons, to what do they point? Shortly thereafter, special conventions were held in Europe. In Poland, 4 huge conventions were held. In the city of Warsaw, more than 27,000 were present in the city's largest stadium. Lapel cards not only identified the delegates as coming from 16 different countries, but also gave a witness to the public. In Poznan, there was an attendance of 19,000 paying rapt attention, even though seated without any backrests. And in the southwestern city of Wrocław, 16,000 were present at a stadium that had to be extensively renovated. Finally, near the city of Katowice, in the southern part of the country, more than 31,000 assembled. Altogether, 94,134 people attended these conventions and 3,137 were baptized. When the conventions moved to the African continent, how thrilling it was to see 32 countries represented at Jamhuri Park in Nairobi, Kenya. Groups came from Tanzania, where some of the brothers saved their money for a year so as to attend. This group came from a country where our brothers have endured hardships, namely Rwanda. For many in this delegation from Uganda, it was their first visit outside of their native country. One newspaper comment stated, they came to Nairobi on planes, trains, buses, bicycles, and on foot. They have come to listen to the word of Jehovah. A highlight of the convention was the baptism. The portable pool was set up at one corner of the field where the immersion service was viewed by all in the audience, including these children, some of whom will one day be taking such a step themselves. In South Africa, 2 huge conventions were held, one in Durban with over 27,000, including some 12,000 Zulu brothers in this stadium. In Johannesburg, the peak attendance almost doubled the number in Durban. On the assembly grounds, there were several different halls that could accommodate various language groups, including more than 12,000 Sesotho-speaking brothers who listened intently to the program. In this building, 19,000 Zulu brothers assembled. Do you notice their rapt attention? The following week, 3 conventions were held in Argentina, the largest being here in Buenos Aires with over 57,000 packing out the River Plate Stadium. 16 different countries were represented. Many of the English-speaking delegates enjoyed a program featuring the missionaries from Argentina, Chile, Paraguay, and Uruguay. With a rapid growth in Argentina, the expansion of branch facilities is underway. These plans show what the new Bethel home in Buenos Aires will be like. In Brazil, 249,351 attended 2 special conventions, with 162,941 here in São Paulo, and another 86,410 in Rio de Janeiro. Other conventions in this series were held in the Orient, including this one in the Philippine Islands. Delegates came from other lands, including Japan. Truly, the thousands of brothers who visited these special conventions will never forget the warmth and love shown by their brothers. Members of the governing body served some of the special conventions in the Far East, such as the one here in Taiwan, where a large group of missionaries are spreading the good news by making use of the Society's literature. Many visitors and local witnesses here in the Southeast Asian country of Thailand also enjoyed hearing a governing body member speak at the Integrity Keepers Convention. The increase in publishers calls for qualified brothers to shepherd the flock. To meet this need, a ministerial training school was inaugurated on October the 1st, 1987, in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area, using the Assembly Hall facilities at Coraopolis. Over 1,500 attended the program, which outlined the purpose of the school. The first class of students was made up of 24 unmarried elders and ministerial servants from the eastern United States and included some of foreign extraction, representing 5 languages. These students were diligent in doing their homework each night and preparing for class discussions and group presentations. They made good use of the library that was available for research. These fine classroom facilities were greatly appreciated by the students and the 2 traveling overseers who served as instructors during the 8-week course. The students benefited from valuable information on the use of the Bible and were given practical training for the work ahead. It was a joyful occasion when this first group graduated on Sunday, November 29, 1987. With family members, friends, and other visitors excitedly looking on, they received assignments to serve in 10 countries. More classes have been scheduled in other cities. The teaching of multitudes in Jehovah's ways has required continual expansion of the world headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses in Brooklyn. In 1963, 2 residence buildings made up the Bethel home, with 675 full-time volunteer workers. Many of them worked at this factory complex. That year, a peak of 1,040,836 publishers was reached. There were 22,761 congregations in 194 countries. In order to meet the increasing demand for Bibles and Bible literature, the Society's printing facilities were increased by the addition of an 11-story building dedicated in 1968. Earlier, the building seen in the foreground had been purchased and added to the factory complex, so it now extended over 4 city blocks. With further expansion anticipated, the Society purchased in 1969 the former Squibb Pharmaceutical Complex at 25 and 30 Columbia Heights, conveniently located close to the Bethel home. These buildings were used initially by the Society for storage space. The east section was demolished in 1980 to make way for the erection of a new structure, which is the section on the right. This was completed in January 1981. The west section was remodeled, and the entire complex has been converted into office space and is now the Society's World Headquarters building. By 1983, the Society increased its space for factory operations. The building on the right, across from the Adams Street complex, was acquired and connected at the 6th floor with an overhead bridge. Another 1 million square feet of floor space was acquired when this huge waterfront property at 360 Furman Street was purchased and renovated. All this expansion of the Society's office and printing facilities has required a corresponding expansion of the Bethel home. In 1969, the 119 Columbia Heights residence was added to the Bethel complex. 6 years later, This 15-story former Towers Hotel was purchased and renovated to provide housing for 1,000 more members of the Bethel family. A few years later, the nearby Standish Hotel was made available and renovated, and more accommodations in the then Bossert Hotel were obtained to help care for the growing needs of the headquarters staff. A new structure on the site where the former Margaret Hotel stood at 97 Columbia Heights has also been added to the Bethel home. All these particular buildings that are owned by the Society and that are located in Brooklyn, New York, are used by Jehovah's Witnesses in connection with their global witnessing activities. By the end of the 1987 service year, Jehovah's Witnesses were proclaiming the good news in 210 lands. In their worldwide association, a peak of 3,395,612 kingdom ministers were inviting honest-hearted people everywhere to be taught by Jehovah. As we contemplate the multitudes being gathered, it impresses upon us the tremendous growth that has taken place during the past quarter of a century. In 25 years, the number of congregations has more than doubled, reaching a total of 54,911. Whereas 1,693,752 had attended the memorial of the Lord's Evening Meal in 1963, there were 8,965,221 present at the memorial that was celebrated in 1987. True to Jehovah's promise, he is teaching the meek ones of the earth his ways. Why is this large group of people seated on the playing field of this stadium? And why are all of these people standing in front of the convention platform? They have responded to the teachings of Jehovah by dedicating their lives to him, and are here to symbolize that dedication by water baptism. If you are one now being taught by Jehovah and have not yet dedicated yourself to do God's will as thousands do each year, we sincerely urge you to keep taking advantage of every spiritual provision. Join in the happy, refreshing spiritual association at conventions. Meet some of the people from all nations, languages, and walks of life who are taught from God's Word. Along with them, you will learn of God's ways and his requirements for life. Yes, you too now have a fine opportunity to acquire an accurate knowledge of the truth. Act without delay. Take a firm stand on the side of God's kingdom. In this way, it will be your privilege to join in extending the invitation to others by saying, "Come, you people, and let us go up to the mountain of Jehovah, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will instruct us about his ways, and we will walk in his paths."